All right, let's dive into one of the most tense times in recent history. Imagine being in a room where every move could change the world. The United States is on the verge of escalating its involvement in Vietnam. Leaders are in a pressure cooker. Decisions need to be made quickly. They're thinking about how the world is watching, and there's no turning back. Every option carries serious consequences, and no one wants to make the wrong call.
Exactly. And all of this is happening against the backdrop of the Cold War. There are the Vietnamese people fighting for their right to self-governance, their independence. Yet this struggle is being pulled into the larger picture of global tensions. Our journey will explore these critical moments, the decisions and the mistakes, the heroes and the overlooked voices that shaped this conflict. Imagine being at the crossroads of history as you'll soon discover.
Let's start by looking at the beginning of Vietnam's struggle. The French colonized Vietnam in 1858, bringing their customs and attempting to reshape the local culture. The Vietnamese people did not accept this easily. Just as they had resisted Chinese invasions, they fought back against the French. Their desire for independence was strong, and they used every opportunity to resist foreign control.
Now, let's introduce an important figure in this fight for independence. Ho Chi Minh. He became a leader for the Vietnamese people. His journey began with a petition for independence at the end of the Great War, but he never received the support he hoped for. Inspired by the writings of Lenin, Ho Chi Minh became a communist as he wanted to see Vietnam free and independent.
Ho Chi Minh's connection to Lenin and communism was significant. He saw communism not just as an ideology, but as a way to achieve Vietnam's freedom. His belief was that communism offered a path to self-determination. He spent years abroad, gathering support and learning, becoming a symbol of resistance and hope for Vietnam. His ultimate goal was a Vietnam free from foreign control, under its own governance.
His leadership was transformative. Ho Chi Minh's efforts during this time became crucial as he started to build a movement that sought to unite all Vietnamese behind the idea of independence. He led by example, showing resilience and determination. This would set the stage for the future struggles, pulling Vietnam into the larger geopolitical battles of the world, rooted in the desire for national sovereignty.
As World War II spread across Southeast Asia, it brought major changes to Vietnam. During this time, Ho Chi Minh returned to Vietnam with a new plan. He wanted to leverage the weakened French control and the chaos of war to push for Vietnam's independence. Ho cleverly formed a temporary alliance with the United States. This was not out of love for American freedom, but because both Ho and the U.S. had a common enemy, Japan.
Indeed, it's fascinating how Ho Chi Minh contacted the United States during the war for support. He needed their help to fight the Japanese occupiers, who were taking over parts of Vietnam. The U.S., looking for allies in the region, decided to support Ho and his fighters with weapons and training. American support seemed like a beacon of hope for future independence, but this relationship had its complexities.
With the Japanese defeat in sight, Ho was optimistic about Vietnam's future. The hope was that once World War II ended, Vietnam could finally be free from foreign rule. He even proclaimed independence in 1945, addressing thousands of people in Hanoi. But after Roosevelt died, President Truman faced a tough decision. The Cold War context changed everything, pushing Truman to see communism as a growing threat. Vietnam's independence dreams were caught in this new political game.
Exactly. And this shift in American policy was profound. After Roosevelt's death, the U.S. started to perceive support for anti-colonial movements like Ho's as potential openings for communism. Truman, concerned about Soviet influence, found it difficult to support Vietnamese independence under a communist banner. This was a turning point. The Americans, once allies of Ho against the Japanese, now faced a dilemma: support a potential communist government, or back the return of French control.
So after World War II, the French were determined to take back control of Vietnam. The country had been through a lot with the war, and now the French wanted to reestablish their rule. Vietnam, however, wasn't having any of it. The people had tasted the idea of independence, and they didn't want to go back to being a colony. There was a lot of support for Ho Chi Minh and his cause. The Vietnamese forces were really smart with their tactics. They used guerrilla warfare, which is when a smaller group uses hit-and-run tactics.
That's right. This way of fighting was very effective, especially against a larger, more traditional army like the French. The Vietnamese used their knowledge of the land to their advantage. They knew the jungle and the countryside better, and they used that to surprise the French forces. The French underestimated them at first, thinking that their bigger army could handle it easily. But it turned out to be much harder than they expected. As the war dragged on, both sides got more desperate to win crucial battles.
One of those crucial battles was at a place called Dien Bien Phu. The French thought that if they could win here, it would turn the tide in their favor. They set up a strong base, expecting to easily beat the Viet Minh forces, but they made a big mistake in ignoring the hills around them. The Viet Minh set up heavy artillery there before launching a surprise attack. The French base was surrounded, and supplies were cut off. It turned into a long, brutal fight lasting 55 days.
And eventually, the French lost that fight. It was a turning point. The defeat at Dien Bien Phu was a huge blow to French morale and signaled the end of French colonial rule in Vietnam. This defeat led to the signing of an armistice, which split Vietnam into two parts along the 17th parallel. The North and South were divided, setting the stage for even more conflict in the years to come. Vietnam was now stepping into a very uncertain future, with the Cold War pressures only increasing.
After the French left, the political scene in South Vietnam didn't calm down as expected. Ngo Dinh Diem was leading, but his rule was full of corruption. Many people weren't happy because they felt the government was not fair. Plus, Diem didn't treat Buddhist people well, which created a lot of tension. The United States noticed this and decided to step in. They sent the Green Berets to help train the South Vietnamese army. The U.S. thought that by funding the military, South Vietnam might become stronger.
But while the U.S. was busy helping Diem's government, another force was rising. The Viet Cong, with its roots in the north, began to gain support. They were part of the National Liberation Front, or NLF, and aimed to unite Vietnam. Many people in the rural parts of Vietnam weren't pleased with Diem's rule and saw the Viet Cong as a path to change. These rural areas were crucial as they provided fighters and support against South Vietnam's army. The religious tensions only helped the Viet Cong by giving them more reasons to fight.
Religion played a big role in the situation. Diem was a Catholic leader in a country that was mostly Buddhist. His government often ignored or even oppressed Buddhist practices, leading to major protests. It wasn't long before the infamous image of a monk setting himself on fire spread around the world. This act was a protest against the oppressive regime, and it really caught international attention. All these issues made the U.S. rethink their strategy and involvement in South Vietnam. The advisory role was getting more complicated as the situation inched towards chaos.
Yes, the involvement was initially just advisors and special forces, but the lines were blurring. The Viet Cong continued their fight against Diem's regime, gaining more influence. As they grew stronger, they posed a significant challenge to the South's government. This was a turning point because it was a matter of time before the U.S. had to decide on their next course of action. South Vietnam's instability was becoming a problem on a global stage, especially as Cold War tensions lingered. The challenge was not just about a corrupt regime, but the rising support for communism.
After the fall of Ngo Dinh Diem's regime, South Vietnam found itself in chaos. There were power struggles that kept the country in a constant state of stress. Between January 1964 and June 1965, South Vietnam witnessed the rise and fall of 8 different governments. Such instability made things very challenging for everyone involved. The South was supposed to be building a stable democracy, yet it was becoming a more volatile and unpredictable region. This was partly because different factions kept fighting for control.
Absolutely. And right in the middle of these changes, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, which added to the instability. His death was a huge shock to the world, especially to those who expected him to guide the U.S. forward in Vietnam. Lyndon B. Johnson, his vice president, took over but was walking a fine line. It was a tough spot for him too, as he had reservations about some of the actions being taken. Johnson was concerned the situation in Vietnam might escalate, but he couldn't ignore it altogether.
Then came the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964, which was a significant event that led to many misunderstandings. The USS Maddox, an American destroyer, reported it was attacked by North Vietnamese torpedoes. But later, it became clear that things were not as straightforward as they seemed. There were many conflicting reports, and even doubts about whether a second attack happened at all. However, what seemed probable at the time had huge political implications, pushing the U.S. towards a more aggressive stance.
Yes, indeed. The Gulf of Tonkin incident led Congress to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. This was a crucial moment as it gave President Johnson the power to take necessary steps in Vietnam without needing a formal declaration of war. This resolution was like a blank check for expanding U.S. involvement. It marked a shift from advisory roles to a more active military engagement. With this, the U.S. officially escalated its involvement in Vietnam, changing the course of the conflict significantly.
After the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the Viet Cong became more active, staging attacks that caught the attention of the international media. Their assault on Pleiku, where they attacked an American air base, resulted in the loss of lives and significant damage. This marked a crucial turning point. Up until then, the U.S. hesitated to expand its involvement, but Pleiku highlighted the need for a stronger response. The pressure was mounting on President Johnson to act decisively, given the serious threats now evident.
That attack on Pleiku really pushed things forward. It wasn't just about the loss, it was about the brazenness of the attack in what should have been a secure area. This incident showed that the conflict was escalating, and it demanded more attention from Washington. Operation Rolling Thunder was born from this pressure, a campaign meant to weaken the North Vietnamese forces through continuous bombing. The idea was to apply pressure and force the North to the negotiating table, hoping this would lead to a more favorable outcome.
Operation Rolling Thunder began in March 1965 with a mission to attack and destroy targets in North Vietnam. It marked a new phase, as this wasn't just a response to specific attacks, but a broader strategy to weaken North Vietnam's capacity to fight. The operation aimed to hit strategic targets, including transportation routes and supply lines, cutting off resources that were crucial for the Viet Cong. This showed a significant shift from earlier advisory roles, highlighting a more aggressive stance to manage the growing tension.
But the North Vietnamese were resourceful and resilient. They adapted by developing an intricate network of tunnels and by moving supplies under cover of night. The bombing campaigns, instead of cowing them, only strengthened their resolve. They used the bombed areas to rally further support among the local populace, showing resilience in the face of adversity. The spirit of the Vietnamese fighters was not easily broken, and Operation Rolling Thunder, despite its intensity, failed to have the decisive impact that the U.S. hoped for. This persistence displayed another side of the conflict.
As we wrap up this journey through the complexities of the Vietnam War, it's time to reflect on its enormous cost and impact. This conflict left a lasting shadow on both American and Vietnamese societies. The war not only took countless lives, but also changed the course of history for both nations. For Americans, it brought a deep questioning of foreign policy and military intervention, a painful reminder of the consequences of war.
We hope this series has offered you deeper insights into this pivotal chapter of history. If you found value in our discussions, we invite you to like and subscribe to stay updated with our future content. Your feedback is important, so leave a comment and let us know your thoughts. Join us on this journey of exploring historical and peace studies. Thank you for listening and engaging with us.